When I experience an obstacle or challenge, I'm going to move past it. I'm going to shatter that glass ceiling and I'm going to keep going.
It hurts to smash a glass ceiling.
Wow, we literally have to be superheroes to walk through this life.
While I might have been the first, I pray that I'm not the last.
Welcome, listeners. Hey. Here we are. Hey, Janine.
Hey, it's good to see you, Joshua.
It's very good to see you too. Listeners and viewers, we are so excited that you're here. And just a little bit about our show first. We strive here to give women a platform to tell their stories and explain how they lead. And I say this on every single show, but it bears repeating. These conversations give us unique insights into the impact women in leadership can make in transforming the way we work and live. And for both Janine and I, we have been transformed in the way that we work and live by our guests. So
that's
today,
sure.
Yeah, sorry, we talk right over the top of you there. Today is different in a couple of ways. First, we're on time. Yay! Everybody say yay.
Figuring out those tech issues, right?
Figuring out the tech issues. Yeah, we had a couple last time. And we're also in the evening today. So we're hopeful that at least for the Western Hemisphere, is a little easier for people. Mm-hmm. And
hope everyone's kicked back and relaxed.
Glass of wine.
From work. Yeah, the fire going, depending on where you live.
Yeah, exactly. So Janine, anything you wanted to mention about the platforms that we're on or the podcast?
So I just wanted to let everyone know this is a podcast, and we will be kind of editing all these down for our audio version of our podcast at takingherlead.blueberry.net. You can see it's BLUBRRY.net. We're on Spotify. We're on, help me name them, iTunes,
Pandora,
YouTube, SoundCloud. Yeah. So we have a lot going on, and we still need 6 more states. Those Dakotas, doesn't anyone know in the Dakotas? We need them. And Kansas and Wyoming and West Virginia, Mississippi. We're in more countries than we are states at this point. So we're really hoping that our viewers are going to help us out a little bit here, especially since they're neighbors to us up here in Washington. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about our guest today, Jessica Robinson, and how she came to be on the show.
Yeah, I will. So I reached out to a person that you know, Miriam Kiwan, who's in Western Africa. And she knew Jessica through work and in the financial world. And so she connected us with Jessica. And I had a phenomenal couple of chats with Jessica over Zoom maybe a month ago. Just fell madly in like with her. And she's fun.
Easy to do.
Yes. She has such an interesting story and one of triumph against some odds and traveling all over the world. So that's just absolutely fabulous. I wanted to mention just before I say without further ado and bring her on, that we have a little celebration. We were just ranked as 49th podcast in India.
Yes.
And so really excited about that. And we do have an episode with an Indian woman coming up here that we will drop in audio. And let's see. And next week, we will have, on Thursday, we'll be dropping Grace Van Leeuwen, who is in the medical field and a phenomenal director and champion for pediatric cardiology.
Wow, she has a fascinating background. I think the viewers are going to really enjoy listening to her.
Yeah. She's Brazilian in Dubai.
Qatar.
Qatar. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Qatar. Yeah.
She said that. So, and Janine, next Monday, we have Lisa Rueff.
Oh, Lisa Rueff. How could we forget her? Yeah. She's
exactly. Sorry, I sprang that on you.
Yeah. You know, I'm kind of like, we have the lineup all ready to go, but she is fabulous. And what people might not know, she's the co-founder of the board game that we played that one time with Jen Mazer.
Exactly.
Jen Mazer was her compatriot in developing that board game that I now do a monthly Sparked group. And we play the game Sparked. And so I'm really excited to have her and hear what she has to say too. She's going to be fabulous. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah, so lots going on. And so without further ado, we'd like to bring on Jessica Robinson.
Yay.
Hi.
Good morning. Jessica. Good morning for you. Good evening for us. It's nice to see you.
Coming up slowly.
It's very well. I see there is some sunshine just starting to peek through the window there.
Yeah, just peeking through. Well, hey, it's really good to meet you, and I feel like Joshua's kind of got us all set up. So, tell us a little bit about your day, what time of the day it is, how your day runs, and around the world, across the world from us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so it is 6 o'clock in the morning here in Dubai.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's normally actually fine because my kids will be going to school, but actually they're on spring break this week. So thanks, great.
Hopefully they're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're all asleep.
Yeah.
And then the day is really one of multiple. I've got various meetings. I've got a few interviews that I'm doing. Running around, I've got children going to play dates, and I've got my best friend staying with me. So it's been one of
your best friend. Where is she from?
Oh, she's British, but she's just staying with me in Dubai for a while she sets up a home here.
Oh, so. Great. It's nice to have a girlfriend around, isn't it?
Yes.
Part of your tribe.
Yes, exactly.
Great. So, is she going to pop in and say hi?
She's definitely asleep.
Okay. Good for her.
She's got her jammies on.
Hopefully that's the case.
As I was saying, Joshua, before last night we were up very late talking and drinking red wine. So
yay.
Yep.
Yeah. I wasn't. I'm jealous.
That's a nice girlfriend, right? So tell us a little bit about your current position, what you do, and we certainly want to hear about the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I mean, so when I sort of heard this question, I was saying it's so strange. I'm in that position in life where I don't do a sort of I'm a managing director at XYZ. I think I've got to that point where I have what I like to describe as a portfolio career. So I actually am involved in quite a few number of things. My background is I'm an expert in sustainable finance, so responsible investment, ESG, environmental social governance work, also focusing on climate finance, and then I do a lot of work in gender finance as well. So taking those sort of thematic areas that I work in, I was previously head of Asia for a United Nations organization called the Principles for Responsible Investment. I've worked a lot with governments and regulators on developing sustainable finance, green finance frameworks and policy. I've ran a carbon finance company. So all of those sort of pieces have got me to the position now where I do a lot of consulting work. So I'm approached by banks, financial institutions, family foundations, and I do pieces of work that in the field of sustainable finance, which is a great place to be because it means I do work that I'm genuinely interested in. And obviously I have to translate my skills into a day job that, earns money to support the family and whatever.
Minor.
So on top of that, I've also just taken on another new role as leading a carbon tech startup, which is kind of cool.
Wow.
A new experience for me, given that I'm in the environmental and climate field, but the tech aspect is really a big learning for me, which I'm really enjoying. And funnily, the team are all men. And I do say to them, we've got to stop being so alpha male about this.
Yep. Got to get that female influence in there.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I'm on various advisory boards. I do a lot of sort of unpaid advisory stuff, like I've just joined a sustainable startup advisory board.
Just saw that you posted that on LinkedIn, didn't you?
Yeah. So they're looking to. It's an accelerator program. It's the first time they've launched it here in the MENA region to really try and focus on startups developing sustainability related products or services. So that's really cool. So I do a lot of fun stuff like that. And then there's my book.
Please. Want to hear about that?
So I've just published my first book, which came out in February. It's called Financial Feminism: A Woman's Guide to Investing for a Sustainable Future. And that came out. So I wrote the book primarily because I was being approached by a lot of really women in the industry. So I'd speak at a conference, say something like at a conference with institutional investors or something, and I'm talking about what I do in my day job. And I was approached by so many women who would come up to me afterwards and say, this is really important, talking about the impact and sustainability within our financial markets. What more can I do about it? So I started doing this research, and there wasn't a lot out there on women and their investment preferences back then. And so I launched Moxie Future, which is essentially a blog information community platform. I've got a lot of really good traction. And bearing in mind, I've lived all over the world. And when I did this, I launched it when I was living in Asia, always with a global scope. So it was never focused on one region or another. And then it became very apparent, a lot of people reaching out to me saying, how do I get started? And so I decided to put all that knowledge into a book.
Wow. Yes.
A very easy read book, I didn't want something that was technical, off-putting, because half the challenge we have is that women, and this is actually a global phenomenon, but women quite often don't feel very comfortable or confident when it comes to money discussions and what they do with their investments. So you've got only the challenge that this difficult relationship, but you've also got the feeling that, and the data shows us, and we did quite a lot of research on this, that women are highly motivated to think about impact when they make an investment decision. They're actually incredibly concerned about environmental, societal implications of where they invest. So you've got, actually you've got three challenges. You've got the gender investing gap. Women are simply not investing as much as men, which ends up in a shortfall as they retire. And that's not even touching on the gender pay gap. That's purely on the gender investing gap, right? And then you've got this issue of this difficult relationship with the financial industry, which does not do a lot to serve women as clients, right? Everything comes in a sort of male default. And then you've got the third element, which is women genuinely care about the planet and people and sustainability, and they want to translate all of those values into their investment decisions. So that was sort of the thesis behind the book. And the book really was about being sort of like a chat with me. So a very discussion-based, informal. I write it in a very informal style. The aim is I just want the reader to get to the end. Notice I stopped, I said the woman, and I actually said the reader, because I've actually had quite a few male friends read it. But I want them to get to the end and feel inspired to take the next step. So whether that's go meet your financial advisor and say, look, where are your sustainable investment products? Whether it's calling up your pension fund and saying what's actually in your green fund. And that's it. It's really about building some kind of sisterhood. Where you can feel like other women are doing this too, and it's really, really important.
And some common language around it, and not only inspired, but comfortable having those discussions with a little bit more knowledge behind them, right? It's not just, it's learning the language. Right?
And it's creating a movement that doesn't have to be, and it's a global movement, because we know when you look at the data, these are issues that happen across the world, right? There are nuances, of course, but it is a global movement of women saying, sorry, enough is enough. The financial systems are not working to the benefit of what we want them to. So trying to create that sense of force as a collective to make difference happen through the way we invest. So there's an activist piece in there as well. So.
Absolutely. Jessica, so if I read it and I want to really become part of this movement, part of the community, is there a platform for a forum or such for discussing the topics, and sussing things out?
So Moxie Future, that's aiming at what it is. So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of research. I do a lot of webinars, events, training. I've started doing some training courses. So going to Moxie Future is a good place to start. And the book itself, I give as many practical recommendations as possible for things and actions that women can take. So potentially advisors you might want to speak to, some of the tech platforms we're seeing coming up, some of the funds. There's also what's been really interesting is this growth of investor networks. Now, of course, not as in sort of the days of male-dominated investor clubs where they all go and put money on the stocks and shares. This is what we're seeing, and actually in the US, there's the beginning of this investor club set up by women who specifically want to talk about investing with purpose. And I think this is a fascinating development, because what we do know as well with women, they do like to have peer-to-peer discussions around things around money, as opposed to men are more likely to sort of boldly go ahead on their own. They want to take the risk, whereas women are much more they consult more with their peers.
Yeah.
So this concept of investor clubs or networks, I think is really cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we should try and promote as much as possible.
So if we know that women are a little bit more uncomfortable in this, how did you get comfortable? What were your early childhood experiences that said, me,
Great
Jessica,
segue.
I'm going to be comfortable in this space? How did that happen?
So I have to say, again, when I thought about this, so my upbringing was very, I grew up just outside of London, sort of middle class. My parents were very committed to social justice and social issues.
Okay.
And so as a child, I always had a sense of inequality in the work that we need to do to address that. And so for me, I came from a background that was actually quite conventional, whatever. But what happened for me was moving into, as I left university, actually moving into my first job and then my second job, the realization that the world is not an equal playing field. And that's coming from the who went to a nice school and blah, 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 So, and I saw that through. So the first job I had was working for a politician. So I was a researcher for a member of parliament in London. And then the second job is when I moved into financial services, which we can explore a bit later. But in both instances, I saw very clearly that women and men at my level were treated very differently by managers, by senior managers. The expectation of the way a young female graduate should behave versus a male graduate, her counterpart. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, actually, the political world was as you'd expect. I mean, it was rife with sexual tones and there was a lot of stuff going on. But, because unfortunately, people were so desperate to be working for a politician. And I guess it's probably similar in the US. You all want to get that first step in, right?
Right.
But then when I moved into financial services, it was there as well, but in a slightly more subtle way, in that everything we did as teams of consultants. So at this point, I was working as a management consultant. And I was in the financial services sector. So I was one of very few women. So I was in teams of mostly men. Just simple things like the social life was going to the pub and then going to a strip club. And if you didn't do that, then you were missing out on, I don't know,
business.
And I mean, it was almost like that was an acceptable norm. And I've told my daughters this story and they're like, wow, you had to go to strip clubs to be part of the boys.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, but then I felt like I didn't have any, if I pushed back, I'd be excluded. Which obviously all of this has changed, thank goodness. Right. And then the other instance that happened very early on, we were doing a big piece of work for a global client. And actually, I think I'd moved to New York at that point. And we went into the meeting and the client had taken a shining to me and he insisted on hugging me as a hello. Like, this is a guy I'd only met like a couple of times, right? And you're in a work environment. He didn't want to hug any other people, but he wanted to hug me. Wow. And again, being on that side going, I just, like, if I say no, then I look like because the relationship is you're the consultant. So you're always thinking about selling work and delivering good work. And those two things really, really stuck with me, I
hadn't thought of the social dynamics of touch, right? I mean, and how it's different
boundaries
in those environments. The boundaries or lack of boundaries.
Yes, being called out to be required to touch a client because you're a woman or he finds you attractive or something. So, yeah.
Wow, great noticing. Yeah. And were you uncomfortable in those moments or you just accepted it as part of the dynamic that was different?
Well, the reason I mentioned those two things was because I think at that point in time in my life, I was starting on the ladder and you kind of you put up with stuff that you just wouldn't 20 years later.
Right.
And also I'm of a generation where, I remember being told, don't try and change the system from outside, get within the system, change the system from within. Now, for me, in order to be in, I had to tolerate that kind of behavior. Now, 20 odd years later, we're in a very different place.
Right.
Right.
And you found your voice, and so has a lot of other women.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I mean, can you imagine 20 years ago going to HR and saying, yeah, the client insisted on hugging me? They'd probably have said, well, yes, but, you know, we are consultants. Do you know what I mean? You would have even
Right.
whereas
That's
now,
how men are. That's how they show their affection.
Yeah.
That's how they show their business, right? They're interested and you've
Yeah.
captured their attention, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So all of those things, you know, made me, so coming from a background where my parents were very strong about thinking about inequalities and the work that we can do. And then at the same time, working in an industry that it seemed to sort of put upon me, I sort of got to the point, and this isn't really in terms of my upbringing, but I got to a pivotal moment where that's when I decided that I didn't want to work within the system. I wanted to work out of the system.
So you've gotten what you needed in terms of learning and information and how to navigate that, and then you can use it in a different way.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Externally.
Yeah.
Well, you just took my next question right out of my mouth about
What
pivoting
was
and
the pivotal moment? Yeah.
pivotal moment. So that sure was. So I'll skip past that and ask.
Well, I can explain what the pivotal moment was.
No, that'd be great. Yeah, no, I was going to go right on. But please.
So I was in Beijing. So I've lived all over the world. I've lived in obviously London, New York. I moved to Beijing in 2005, 2006, so a couple of years before the Olympics. At this point, I'd had my first daughter, and I was pregnant with my second daughter. And I'd left my management consulting job. I'd moved with my then husband to Beijing. I had these two babies. And I remember observing everyone was so panicked about the air. So we'd had these big air filter systems in the apartments to help the kids breathe. And I remember just standing there and looking out into Beijing. And you kind of need to go to Beijing to know what I'm talking about. But there was just so much activity and action. But the air was so yellow, so sulfuric that you couldn't step outside. And it hit me like, here am I brought in these two lives into this world. We are consuming at such a rate that we cannot support it. Our air is so polluted that I have to run air conditioning units in my house. And I just this is not the world I want to live in or contribute to. So that for me was this big moment. So at that point, I decided to do a second master's degree, and I studied applied environmental economics, because what I did not want to do was go back to the consulting financial services world that I was in before and just keep playing along with the game, earning money, keep playing along. And I was like, that's not what I'm going to do. So I'm going to retrain. And so I did. And then that moved my career. As I mentioned, I've run a carbon finance company. I've run a think tank. I've done a lot of work on climate. So for the last 15 years, that's been the content of my work. And now the reason I say I moved from working inside the system to outside the system, 15 years ago, nobody wanted to talk about sustainability in our financial markets. And, I used to knock at doors continuously, particularly when I was running the think tank, because we needed to raise funding for research and so forth. I used to get called a tree hugger because that's how it was perceived, right?
Yep.
And
fellow tree hugger.
But now we're in a very different situation.
Right. And what I love about that story is you really stood your sacred ground. You really knew what you valued, knew what you were trying to create, and you were taking steps toward it. And, there's so many people in the world who can be naysayers and call you names and tell you you're silly and those things. I mean, there's plenty of those people in the world, right? And so you did.
There was something joyous, and I still feel this, about sticking two fingers up to the financial system and saying, no, you haven't got it right. Because when you look historically, I mean, this is what riles me so much. When you look at like financial crisis and the behavior of people, it's criminal. They don't go to court. They don't go to jail. But there's a growing population of smart individuals and companies who understand that we can use wealth for good, right?
Mhm.
We have this discussion that money is a social construct. It's something that we came up with to allocate capital towards environmental or the world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, we can use it for positive gain for the majority of people. At the moment, we're not, right?
No.
So
That's really interesting. Gina, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. So Jessica, we've had some similar paths because I've done a ton of research into environmental sustainability. I've taught some classes and courses around that. And I found that the more that I knew, the more I was changed. And and my passions grew. And it sounds like those pivotal moments for you, some deep passions grew and changed your course. Would you say the same thing, that a lot of your passion comes out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I do feel that our work, our commitment to a job or a career is a reflection of who we are. And I do think the more we can push young people to acknowledge that and live on their terms, the better. Because I didn't have anyone telling me that in my 20s, which is why I ended up in some awful situations that just wasn't me. I've managed to sort of forge a path forward that is a reflection of who I am. But that means there are millions and millions of people who haven't, right? We kind of get pigeonholed, and then you get into a situation where you're financially dependent on certain things. But yeah, those passions, I believe, are to be translated into what you spend your energy doing for the majority of your time, which is working.
Yeah.
Well, the word conviction comes to mind when I hear you speak. Like you've decided that, to live that choice. And so we all have experienced people who've been our resistors. My question is, who's influenced you? Who's inspired you? Who's paved the path before you? Who's in your network that, just has created some validation for you? Because this is something that's a little bit out of the box for sustainability is, finances for women. Who's inspired you? Who's given you that little shot in the arm?
So I think one of the amazing things because I have lived and worked all over the world, and during that journey, you pick up these amazing people, right? So I often joke with my parents that I was sent to the wrong school. I was sent to this very small all-girls private school just outside of London. It was the most inappropriate place for a girl like me, right? We were taught to sew, we did cooking class. Yeah. By the way, I can do neither of those things. I had to fight to do economics and politics A-level at the time. So it's interesting that having been in that environment, to then translate that in as you move into your career, you sort of actively seek out mentors, women who you feel like you just kind of want to be under their wing, if that makes sense. And I do remember the first time that clicked for me. I just found out I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I was just about to sign a contract with an insurance company to do a piece of governance work. And between the first interview and the second interview, I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't an intended thing. So I went into the second interview, and the first thing I said was, look, I'm in this situation. I just found out I'm pregnant. I was fully expecting her to say, look, okay, then we can't take you on. She turned around because it's so hard for women as when they become pregnant, they become mothers. It's not an issue for me at all. And at that moment, like, that's how it works. Women support women, right? That was a massive moment for me. And then sort of as I've transitioned through different stages in my career, I have found different types of mentors. Most of them have been women. I will be honest, most of them have. I do, though, have some male counterparts who've also been leading lights in my career. Again, I remember I was in Hong Kong, and I was attending a conference, and it was kind of soon when I'd moved into the environmental finance space, and there was a government minister speaking, and I just put my hand up and I asked a couple of difficult questions, right? And afterwards, she came up to me and she said, "Your questions were excellent. Let's go for breakfast. I'd love to learn more about you." And again, it was like this woman, you know, a special moment where where somebody takes time to consider you and support you. And then, so we did, and we intellectually, we connected, and then she's been fantastic through my career. And she came to me to say, let's spend some time together. And so those kind of things for me, I try to now do. So when people reach out to me on LinkedIn, I always respond. I always respond. If they go, can we talk? Because I want to move into sustainable finance. I will always have a call with someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I just think it's our responsibility to do that.
Paying it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've all had the feeling of reaching out to multiple people and just being ignored.
Right.
And I don't want to be one of those people that does the ignoring. I genuinely want to be approachable and constructive. And so I always say very clearly, yes, of course, we will speak. I will give you the experience I can as well.
That's a powerful stance to take, is to say, I see you and I'm with you. Right. Yeah. And so it's a wonderful way to pay it forward. I just love that whole thought process that you have around that. It's a gift.
And they help us when we face challenges. And on that note, Jessica, you know, I'm going to ask this. What are some challenges that you've faced? You just touched on that when you were younger a little bit, but I'd love to hear things that you have conquered, or maybe not conquered, but stuff that you've faced and had to walk through. Yeah. What a man term. Sorry. I'm going to delete that part.
So I think there's obviously different levels of challenges and different things that need sort of conquering, if you think. But come
up with a better word.
I have to say, and this is a very personal situation. I think that, so I have 3 children, and who I raise single-handedly, and I do it all over the world, right? It's not like I live around the corner from my parents. My kids and I have moved. You know, I've got my 2 elders who speak fluent Mandarin because we lived in China for many years. Now we're in the Middle East, they're learning Arabic. Now I have taken that decision to be a global citizen was a very conscious decision. But of course I'm now dragging my children around because the reason I'm doing this is I want them to see the world for what it is, in that there's so much diversity, so much culture, there's so much goodness, and use that to do something great, you know. And I had this thing, and it's in the front of my book that I wrote, my dedication to my kids, which is just make sure you leave the world a better place than when you arrived. It doesn't matter what you do. I don't know, you can play music, you can go and do whatever, but just focus on the fact that if we act with kindness and we seek to bring positive light into people's lives, to me, that's the purpose of living, right? So all of that's some nice stuff, but the point about challenges is it's very, very difficult to single-handedly raise 3 children. And, you know, financial stuff aside, I'm talking about the emotional stuff, right? And it pulls, you know, like it never stops. So for me, I work very long hours, but when I put my computer away, I've still got so many things to do. Even if it's just the admin of running a home with 3 kids, it's the emotional stuff, right? It's the conversations my teenagers want to have at this stage in their life, and they should be having. You know, with my 6-year-old, it's that he wants to sit and read a book with me. So not having anyone to share that with means you carry a sense of, well, actually, very honestly, it's a sense of guilt that you're not doing enough, which I think most parents feel anyway, but double it if you're doing it on your own.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Because you want to be present.
Yeah. And I think, of course, you sit back and, I mean, I was never one of those people who felt, oh, if we're not together, what's going to happen to the kids? You know, like a lot of people you hear like they should be getting divorced, but they don't want to because of the kids. I was always, we'd be happier apart. As a family, we'd be happier apart. So this is the life that we are going to forge, myself and the 3 children. This is the family we're going to create. And as a family unit, we're incredibly tight. But even here, even in 2021, they do come home with stories about why our family doesn't look like other people's family. And I think obviously being in the Middle East, then that's a slightly strange dynamic. Well, actually Asia as well. I mean, Asia as well, it was a bit different. But on the flip side, what they're getting is an ability to understand that, you know, you can be strong, you can achieve, you can forge your own way forward. We don't have to look like everybody else, right? And so being a role model to them is what drives me fundamentally. I don't get it always right, because obviously there are times where, you know, I'm working in the middle of the night and then I feel guilty because I haven't done this and I haven't done that. And but I think when they come out the other end, so I hear that teenagers get better.
You hear that, right?
I hear that. And actually, funny enough, I was on a
I'll
call
cross
yesterday.
my fingers for you.
Well, I was on a call yesterday, and this woman, she had a couple of toddlers, and she said, "Oh, tell me." And I said, "Sweetheart, you think toddlers are hard? Wait until they're teenagers."
Yep.
Nobody wants
I've got
that.
both. I've got both going on.
Yeah. That's the
They're
challenge.
great. They're great fun because you're seeing their minds and brains kind of like expand.
Right.
But
you know, I wanted to jump in and say that I'm inspired by the stories of a number of our guests, which you are embodying, where you are mom and you are pursuing your dreams outside the house, you know, professionally and in your impact on the world and people. And a long time ago, I thought, you know, if you're going to have a big impact on your kids, you got to be home all the time. And that has really shifted for me. Now I feel that it's the quality of the time that you get with them, right? And if they're seeing you pursuing their dreams and driving forward and yet still spending some quality time with them, I think that's hugely impactful. So you.
They're watching what you do.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just what you say. So,
and the funny thing is as well, I think we over focus on parenting success. But actually, part of parenting success is when your children see you're upset or you failed at something, they see you stand up and move on, right? Yeah. So they learn from those situations as much as the joyous moments, right? Yeah. And it was funny. I remember right at the beginning, I thought I should not cry in front of them because I thought it would upset them. And I remember talking to a counselor, and she said, "Look, don't hold it back. Show them the authentic you. Show them that you have vulnerabilities and emotions, and then show them how you work through it." And that for me was like, oh yes, I don't have to be the perfect mom, right?
Right.
I just
and be happy all the time.
Yeah. You just have to learn and show your children that you're learning. You know, you don't get to a certain age and go, wow, everything's sorted. It's a continual journey.
Right. It's not building the facade.
Yeah.
Right.
Tearing it down. I love it.
So one of the things that I think women have a challenge with is conflict. And we have this conversation where I work all the time of how do we show up in conflict? And I'm wondering, how is your approach to conflict now versus a younger you? How do you navigate conflict? I mean, you're in a male-dominated field, and there's certainly going to be a difference of opinion. Right? How have you changed, and what's your approach to conflict or moving around obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think obviously as you get older, you understand conflict more. And sometimes it may not be an obvious conflict. The conflict may be quite subtle and played in a subtle way. And I think that I was definitely more amenable when I was younger because as you get older, your confidence grows that you can push back, right? And it doesn't have to be a fight, but you can be assertive to resolve the situation. And I do think back to women, and I know we're focusing on women as leaders. What have we seen in the last year to 18 months? Who have been the successful leaders through the pandemic, right? 9 times out of 10 have been women. Yeah. Because women have a way of understanding the complexity of a situation, working with all the different stakeholders and bringing them together.
And
it's funny. So, and I say, because I have lived in so many different countries, there's always the cultural differences and nuances that you get. And I just give an example. I was speaking on a webinar. I'd been invited to speak to the staff of a large bank in the Middle East about financial feminism, which is really exciting. I was like, yeah, they want me to talk about it. It's really exciting. It was amazing. They had 100 people of their staff all dialed in. And at one point, so they went to questions, and it was actually a gentleman. He said, look, women can be as aggressive as men. They can be as assertive and as aggressive as men. We're seeing this now. This is great. He was talking from a position that aggression was a good thing to be in the financial industry. And I countered. I didn't want to enter into a massive argument. I just countered and sort of asking, well, why is aggression seen as a positive attribute, in the context of this industry that we're working in? It's almost as though the default position is to be aggressive and assertive. And so my counter was, is this really what we want? What about other attributes that people, not just women, people bring to the table, such as diplomacy or empathy or compassion,
and tact even.
So it was interesting that it came up, but then the really interesting thing that happened was several women afterwards emailed me and said, oh, I'm so glad you pushed back on that. And I just think that's really telling. And so that's in the Middle East, right? That's an experience that's happened in a bank in the Middle East. So there are women who are saying, hey, hang on, we don't have to behave in this aggressive, confrontational way. There are other ways to do it. And I believe that groundswell of and not acknowledging that is really starting to happen. And as I said, through 2020, I mean, I think we know who the rock stars are, right?
Yes, we do.
And most of them are women.
Yep. We're gonna interview every single one on this show.
That's our goal.
That's our goal.
So
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. It's along the lines of having a toolbox where aggressive interaction, healthy aggressive interaction is a tool, and nurturing is a tool, and collaboration is a tool, and knowing when to use them is the real key. And so many people, many men, overuse a couple of those tools or use them exclusively all the time. So yeah.
I also think this thing around language is incredibly important. Something at some point I want to explore a lot more is that the way we talk to men and women differently really seeds and beds in these behaviors and traits that are not productive. So I talk about this in my book, in the way that the industry and mainstream media talk to men and women about money and investing. So it's fundamentally different, right? They talk to women about saving up for a new handbag, being cautious, because almost on the assumption that you're going to be underpaid anyway. So just be careful with what you've got. Whereas on the flip side, we talk to men about being a man, taking the risk to invest, being strong. And you can see it. There's quite a few studies out there, the differences that we are communicating to men and women on money. Women be careful and cautious, men be strong and take risks. And the visuals even, you can, it's just crazy, isn't it? And I think it's those kind of conversations that happen in all industries, and being able to challenge them and say, hang on, that default is not necessarily where we want to be.
Yeah, like using the word conquer. Sorry.
And I did everything in my brain, and I must have seen it. And the ad that I can picture in my head is he's a man on rocks with a lion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or the art of war. Yeah. Being a standard tone. I mean, there are other ways of doing things.
Well, even Brene Brown says that when, people are in a shame storm, men are it's over status and power and position, and women, it's over how they look and their parenting. Yeah. So, we're kind of still letting that all play out, right? I mean, we reinforce that if we're not careful.
Yeah.
So
and we feed in. As a mother of 2 teenage girls, I am very conscious about, well, A, the impact of social media, and B, the influence of how they feel they should look and alike. And it's a constant challenge to counter, because you're bombarded from so many different angles. So I can only do what I can do at home, because you can't control what's out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and it's surprising, you know, the whole Instagram, they show me sometimes some of these young girls are posting bikini shots, and I say, does her mother know? And they're like, yeah, she's encouraging her.
All right. Well, we just had the delight last week of interviewing a photographer, Hera Allison, and she is really on a mission to revolutionize the way we see our bodies and ourselves, not just women, but men also. And it was a fascinating discussion for exactly that, is like, how do we just stand in our own beauty and not have to
I love
recreate
that.
Really right?
That. Yeah.
And she has many photographs of men too. So it's really a powerful thing to just be able to say, I can see myself as beautiful and not have to do a lot of jockeying and gymnastics to have other people validate that. Right. It's a powerful message.
Strong in your own skin. Yeah. Jessica, what are some books that you're reading or resources that you're having fun learning from, or other than your own book, which I've read excerpts already. It's amazing, but
no, trust me, I'm not reading my own book.
you can't. I never look at these videos after they're published. It's you know.
Do you know what I'm reading? Actually, two books I'm reading at the same time. I'm Untamed, which is I can't remember the name of the author. A woman who it's a great book, right? She's
Glennon.
gone through,
Glennon Doyle,
she's gone through this huge
Melton.
transition, and she writes beautifully,
right?
And so it's about like pushing back on sort of gendered stereotypes and why did we think that and that. So that I've just really loved reading, and I've almost finished that. And the other book I've read, which has been picked up and put down maybe 6 or 7 times in the last 6 months, is on mindfulness. How to, because I get it.
A little bigger of a challenge, right?
You know when you sometimes, I don't know if you ever do this. I buy a book and I hold it. And it's like I want to read it by osmosis.
Just go in me, right? Right.
I'm in my life,
right? I don't want to have to do that hard work.
What's so funny? So it's an 8-week program where you meditate every day. It says, and I've got to that point. It says, now clear out a time in your life where you've got 8 weeks to commit once a day. Maybe I'll do it next month.
How many minutes is this? How many minutes do I have to do this? Oh, I don't have 5 minutes.
Having meditated in my past, and I've done courses and I've read lots of stuff, I see the benefit, but you have to take the next step. You know, commit and actually start doing it. So I've been carrying it down with me.
You don't have a half an hour every single day at the same time to spend doing that?
Honestly, not at the moment.
No, I can't even imagine. Yeah, can't even imagine that.
Well, Jessica, the first time that I went to a spa in Pasadena, they had this waiting room and you're in your robe and your slippers and everything. And they have this sign on the door that says quiet room. And I'm like, I can't go in there. There's nothing quiet about my mind. I can keep this quiet sometimes, but my mind won't be quiet in there. There is no point in me entering that room. So I get the challenge. I'm a little bit better now, but it's a hard one. I want to hear, do you have a self-care hack that you do? Is there something that you do that takes care of you, that this is my guilty pleasure, this is my simple pleasure, this is how I care for myself?
So I was going to say, the one thing that I do, and this most people are going to think you're absolutely crazy, I run a lot, right? And so for me, running is my escape. It's not to punish my body or to get fitter, or I mean, I love feeling stronger and fitter, but for me, if I'm really stressed, going for a long run genuinely is the way I deal with it. I find it quite meditative as well, right?
Yeah, sure.
My head
focusing.
I play really hardcore trance dance music, EDM, like full on, which most people are like, what? And then I just run, and I run anything between 10 and 16 kilometers. And
it's a good run.
I do that maybe 3 or 4 times a week, depending on the weather. But for me, if I can't do that, that's when I know that's my stress reliever, which I know for a lot of people, they would think that's strange, but I do think that's a really important part of my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and it's
alone.
taking care of yourself. Yeah.
It's alone.
Yeah, you're right, Joshua. And that's the other thing. I don't want to run with a friend. I just want to run on my own.
Right.
Because you have people.
Meditation. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have people around you all the time, little people and big people. Yeah.
And it's the music as well. So I'm really into music. So I'm following a couple of playlists on Spotify, and it's hardcore EDM, which is, you have to like it, right? If you I'm always listening to new music. I want to hear new DJs. I want to hear so for me it's like an indulgence of my music fascination as well.
Yeah. You and I are both audiophiles. Yeah, 100%. We'll talk more about that. Absolutely. I'll send you some things. Yeah. Jessica, what are you most hopeful about with regard to the future of women in your industry and the impact that your work is having on women? What do you want to see?
So I think I want women to be braver, for sure. And I think a lot has happened. So I recite those stories sort of when I started my career, and I've shared those with my daughters, and I've said, look, this is what the world used to look like. It doesn't look like that anymore, right? You've got so much opportunity to essentially think differently, shape things differently. And I said when I was younger, the message was work within the system, right? Try and make changes happen, get into the bank, and then try and make changes happen. Whereas I'm much more now, screw that, stand back out and create new systems. And I think the way we're educating girls, the messages we're starting from, this platform, for example, my book, right? We are saying to women, young women, stand up, use all the levers of change that you've got. We've got your back. And I think that fundamental shift has happened. And I'd say it's actually only happened in the last couple of years. This is not been around for 10 years. Obviously the Me Too movement was obviously part of as we're transitioning, but I think I think there's been so much now, particularly calling on positive role models. We look, we can just look around the world and see loads of amazing women doing amazing things. And so it's all part of it happening. And I think for young women, young girls today, the time is now, right? It's really, you've got all the tools, you've got the support of people, and to be brave. Don't be afraid to be who you really are. It's okay not to be conventional. It's okay not to follow the sort of path that you're told. And actually, weirdly enough, when I say that, I give myself that same advice still today. It's like, it's okay to be this, right? We don't all have to look the same,
right? And we see you as one of those role models from women around the world. I mean, that's what it takes, is these conversations to say, link arms with me, and we'll be okay. Right.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I've observed in the last couple of years, through different things, partly through my professional life, through personal networks, is this concept of the sisterhood. And I've seen it in practice now. It used to be a nice to have, but I've seen it, and I've seen it in different environments and in different molds. And it's a connection of women who just get it, right? And they get what we need to do to move from A to B. And actually the power in that sisterhood is so phenomenal. And so that was definitely something that we didn't have 20 years ago, but we've got it now. And so to be part of that sisterhood, and I mentioned about LinkedIn and always responding. I really give time to girls, young women who reach out to me. And I always say, I'm delighted to connect with you, happy to have a conversation, because the more and more we do that, the more confidence we build in our young female leaders.
And that's where you carve out the half hour of your time, right? I mean, those are the choices that you're making. We all have the same amount of time. And so the feeling that that's where I want to put my energy and time is very future oriented to what's possible. And so if you don't have the time for that half hour of meditation every day, maybe that is a way of filling your soul, is to use that half hour, bringing people along and feeling like you're nurturing the earth in some ways, right? I mean,
and our definition of success has to be a very personal definition, right? And it's never been for me my bank balance. It just hasn't. It hasn't been about the things that I have, my car or anything. It's never been like that. For me, success is having this positive impact. You know, as I said to you at the beginning, making the world a better place than when you arrived. And really, that's my kind of guiding light. What comes out through that journey may not be exactly what other people feel success is, but for me, that's where I feel I'm having the most positive impact.
Who cares what they think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Jessica,
Well,
this
that's
hour,
a wrap. Like, who cares?
this hour has, that's our ending quote. I love it.
That was fabulous.
This has flown. Oh my goodness. And you've got a day with a friend there and your kids to start.
Yeah. And I just feel grateful that we got your time, and
multitude of meetings and
everyone gets that. Yeah. I feel like you've given the world a gift by being with us for an hour. So thank you.
Thank you very much. No, I've enjoyed it. And if there are any listeners who want to learn about sustainable finance, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Yay. And that collective, we can make a difference when we work in the collective. I love that. So thank you.
Yeah. Jessica, have a wonderful day, and we'll be talking soon.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Oh my goodness.
Was she incredible or what?
Yeah. I knew she would be after the first 10 minutes of talking to her.
I keep trying to think of, what did little Jessica look like? Like, how was she that she comes up with sustainable finance? Like, I remember wanting to be, I don't know, a ballerina or something.
Yeah, and here you are. And here she is doing that. And
I know.
It's such a time that we need people like her, both championing women in finance and sustainable finance as the world changes rapidly and more rapidly as we go forward. We need that desperately.
What's allowing people to evolve into what all their contribution's going to be. It's fascinating. It was really fascinating.
It's really fascinating. So Financial Feminism is the book, and it's on Amazon. It's in my queue, and I can't wait to read that as well and send that to women that I know. Yeah.
And I can't wait for Lisa Rueff next week. Next Monday. Yeah. And we'll see what the world brings us next week, or even this week of dropping Grace. I mean, Grace is going to be an incredible episode to listen to. She's amazing, fabulous. So
what a journey. Yeah.
So we've got some really wonderful women on the docket, and we're in this hybrid mode right now where we are taking the live stream and going to edit it down into a podcast episode. But we also have a backlog of some recordings that we want to make sure people get. So we are doing a weekly thing, the live stream, and a weekly drop of who we've already previously recorded. So we have a lot of really interesting things going on right now. So I hope everybody will stick with us and share with their network. That's how the world goes round. We heard it from a couple of our guests that network is everything, and it is for us too. So, all right. Well,
here we go.
Great.
Janine, thanks a lot.
Thanks. It was fun. I'll look forward to next week, Joshua.
It'll be awesome. That's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.